We know that because Trump has told us that climate change is a hoax, and therefore everything that happens is some kind of plot. But in fact, of course, the acceleration is real, and there's sort of really no doubt that it'll keep on accelerating as far as we know, because there's nothing to stop it.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Dale Walkonen, and this is Facing Future. Please subscribe and like this program if you do, and please share your thoughts with us in the comments below. We love to see them. Greenland is suddenly on the world's radar. Climate change has made its harbors more accessible. Cruise ships are adding more stops in Greenland, with thousands descending on the capital city of Nuuk, whose airport, rebuilt and expanded in 2024, now attracts international jet traffic. Its strategic importance includes the fact that the quickest route for a missile attack from Russia or the United States would probably be over Greenland, a nation of some 56,000 mostly Inuit people, whose major exports are fish and shrimp. While they are Danish citizens, they remain autonomous. And in the face of the American offer, 85% of them have stated that their country is not for sale. For the last 28 years, Greenland has been losing hundreds of billions of tons of ice every year, and the melting rate is accelerating.
Oh my God.
While this is alarming to climate scientists who worry about the effect on ocean currents and global weather, it is tantalizing to economic and geopolitical interests who eye its strategic position in a warming Arctic region and its resources as oil, gas, rare earth minerals, gold, uranium, cobalt, copper, and a wealth of precious gemstones become more accessible. A potential bonanza worth hundreds of billions of dollars. However powerful interests see it, the melting of the Arctic ice sheets is a far more serious problem for life on Earth. It is one of the first tipping points to be triggered as we warm the planet. Resource rush or catastrophe in the making? I'm joined today by two eminent members of the Facing Future team, Dr. Peter Whitens, Emeritus Professor of Ocean Physics at Cambridge University, and climate scientist Paul Beckwith. Welcome to you both.
Hello.
It's always great to have a conversation with you. So, where should we start with Greenland? It's politics, it's science. Peter, where would you like to begin?
Well, I just wanted to draw attention to some new news, which is not Greenland as such, but Mount Etna is currently erupting and dumping a vast amount of material into the upper atmosphere, up to 6,000 meters high, the plume that's being emitted. And all of that is ending up as fallout on the Greenland ice sheet. So that the Greenland ice sheet is becoming blacker and blacker because of the amounts of material dumped on it. And that as it gets blacker, it gets more absorbent and it melts more rapidly. So we think that we're in a situation of having a warming effect from the ice sheet, but it's much warmer than we think because of that direct warming impact of the ice sheet material that's dumped. And we will then see it coming in terms of a more rapid melt of the ice sheet.
Yeah, I was just going to add that the massive wildfires in Canada early for this scale, and we had a very bad fire season the year before last, and people in New York and southern cities found out what the ash was like from wildfires, and many of these fires are happening further north, and a lot of the ash is going up into the Arctic. It's funny because sometimes on social media you get really old posts just appearing. Like I got that in particular. I got a post that Jason Box had actually written an article in 2014, so over a decade ago, and he was showing photographs of Greenland. They had some particularly bad years when the ice was completely blackened. And of course, with the very dark surfaces, the albedo or reflectance is extremely low instead of being very, very high. So you get enhanced warming and greatly increased melt rates. So this is a huge factor for melting on not just on Greenland, but on mountain glaciers. And it's not so much of a problem in the southern hemisphere because you don't have it's harder for the black materials to get down there.
Well, our president has his greedy little eyes on Greenland because of its strategic importance, but also because there are incredible things under that ice, which was a mile thick. I don't know how thick it is now, but as that is melting, more and more of that becomes available. When do you think that might open, and what do you think is under there?
Well, I think the world is scrambling for rare minerals, precious metals, for fueling AI chips and more sophisticated computers. And the clean energy industry uses lots of rare minerals and rare metals. So, satellites, like all of sort of high tech puts these things in great demand. So they're looking at areas, at non-conventional areas for mining these things. Although the existing mines that we have are, we have quite a significant number of mines. I mean, one of the things is the electric car industry. People say, well, we can't replace every combustion car with an electric car. And I totally agree. I mean, we need to maybe produce about 10%. And then other technology, car ownership should go, and car sharing cars when needed. If you punch into an app on your phone, I need a car, and the car is there within a minute, right? Which
That would
is
be
the
nice.
experience.
But
If
people are
that's the
so
experience,
attached to their own
yeah,
little car.
they are. So it's always an issue to find more materials to fuel technology. And Greenland has loads
Yep.
of things, but they're deep under the ice.
So far.
And if the
Yeah.
AMOC, if the ocean current system slows down, continues to slow
Mm.
down and fails, stops, then Greenland will go back into a deep freeze, and all this noise about exploiting their minerals will come to a quick end as the ice, sticks around for much longer.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because it's an interesting paradox, because as Greenland melts and fresh water enters the ocean, that changes the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning System. Um, so that has an interesting double whammy in terms of freezing and not freezing in the Arctic. So yeah, an interesting question. Um, but right now it's melting very fast, 7 times faster than it was 25 years ago. Is it going to continue melting at an accelerated rate, or have we reached kind of the peak of its acceleration?
Well, there's sort of really no doubt that it'll keep on accelerating as far as we know, because there's nothing to stop it. And as the ice changes, we're going to see a completely changing panorama for the Arctic. Of course, we know that, as because Trump has told us, that climate change is a hoax, and therefore everything that happens is some kind of plot. But in fact, of course, the acceleration is real, and that implies a rapidly increasing melt rate and changes in the composition of the ice, so that it's going to look like a material that's different from what it used to be.
Is there less snow that's falling? And the snow whitens. So we started with the darkening of the ice, but the snow makes it whiter. Is there more snow falling or more rain falling? Yeah, as the change, we're entering the melt season now in the summer.
Well, it's rain now. I mean, I was last on the Greenland ice sheet a couple of years ago, and there was a huge amount of meltwater everywhere, masses of meltwater dumping itself into pools, which move down into the interior of the ice. So the rate at which water is dumped into space is increased enormously, which we can't do anything about. And we better get used to it.
Yeah, well, the people of Greenland, there's only 56,000 people there, all live in a very small area on the coasts. And as I believe that Greenland is actually rising, the land is rising, but would they be inundated by sea level rise at any time?
Well, they can be inundated by various factors related to flooding events, which are happening a lot where the ice is blocked, causing a build-up of ice and then a release in the sense of a huge flooding event. And that these
Yeah, Peter's talking about flooding from inland, water rushing down to the coastline as opposed to sea level rise. Think of the huge mass of ice on Greenland during the Ice Age. It pushed the land down significantly. And as the ice melted back into the Holocene, there's isostatic rebound of the land, which can cause relative sea level on coastlines there to drop. That's one factor. But another factor is that the ice acts as a huge sort of attraction point for water. There's gravitational attraction of water to this huge mass, right? And as the huge mass declines, that attraction of water to the coastline is less. So that's another factor for relative sea level to be lower. You're even receding on the coastline. I think one of the big problems is the geography of the region. A lot of the small villages are in these long, narrow fjords, very deep water, very steep sides. So if you get a calving event from an ice shelf, then that can create a wave, like a tsunami, and that tsunami could be fairly small when it enters a fjord, but because of the long, narrow fjords and the physics of how a wave propagates up to an increasingly narrower fjord, the height of that tsunami can greatly increase, and that can then take out coastal villages. That's a big concern, and it's happened. They've had some problems in the past, and it's still a big risk as the ice sheet continues to melt at faster and faster rates. I mean, the AMOC thing is really a wild card. It still, may not happen. I mean, in which case, as Peter said, there's nothing to stop the acceleration of the ice loss from Greenland.
another factor that increases the melt rate is glaciers, which are disintegrating, like an entire glacier ice sheet will break up, and you have a sort of remnants of huge icebergs, but those icebergs melt quickly. Everything is leading towards increases of melt rate.
Well, there was recently that glacier in Switzerland that the people were warned, fortunately, and were able to get out of the way as their village was flattened. Which brings me to, I must say, the Trump administration's very strange dismissal of climate science and of the budgets for it. And there is now on YouTube, please check it out, 100 hours of climate scientists saying what they do and what they won't be able to do under these budget cuts. One of the things is to warn people of catastrophes. Those people in Switzerland were warned of what was going to happen as the glacier descended over them. I suppose in Iceland as well, there would be glaciers that might descend over populations. Is that so?
You said Iceland.
In Greenland, sorry.
Yeah.
Greenland.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the problems with the severe weather this year in the US. I mean, there's all of the National Weather Service has been severely cut, so the forecasting ability is nowhere near as good as it was before. I talk about it as a golden shield against extreme weather events. Okay, the US had a great golden shield against extreme weather events like derechos, tornadoes, and we're coming up into hurricane season. So these tropical storms, good warnings, good evacuations, the funds to rebuild or to get people back on their feet after disasters and wipe out whole communities. But a lot of these things are disappearing. So the number of people killed by these storms I think will significantly go up this year. We're already seeing it with tornadoes in the US. So the warning on the glacier, obviously they monitored the glacier that collapsed and they, as you said, evacuated the town. a week before. I guess they had seismometers, measured shifts of like little tremors as things were shifting. They probably had drones looking at cracks in the glacier and so on. So the signs were all there that it was going to go down into the valley. So that saved huge numbers of lives. Another thing with the getting less snow on Greenland and more rain is you get the melting on the surface from the rain hitting the surface and pooling on the surface. You also get that water burrowing its way down into the glacier to the bedrock at the base of the glacier, and then it runs along the bedrock downhill, and that can lubricate the base. And if it's lubricated, then the whole glacier can move more quickly. So that leads to bigger ice shelves on the coast as the glacier moves off over the ocean. And then when you get more calving, then, as Peter said, you get very, very rapid melting of the ice. So you get melting from all of these different mechanisms. It's not just the warm rain melting the ice. And then you have the configuration of the jet streams. You have to think of the overall Arctic air circulation patterns. So often we're getting, very distorted, wavy jet streams because the Arctic is warming much faster than lower latitudes. And these jet streams then get stuck in place, and you often get a high pressure area, a ridge, strong ridge of the jet stream stuck over Greenland and parked there for days on end. And this can cause huge melt rates. And at times you can have almost the entire surface of Greenland under melt. There's a lot of good research being done. I have to mention Jason Box, who's still doing a lot of active research on what's happening to ice in Greenland.
So Russia has a lot of ships in the Arctic, and America strangely doesn't have as many icebreakers. Maybe we won't need them in the future. I don't know, but there's this geopolitical problem up there in the entire Arctic region as Russia looks at, oh, we could have a shipping route through where we couldn't before.
Russia's an Arctic nation. They've always been a northern country and had ships up there and so on. And, Canada is also in that situation with Canada's vast northern reaches into the Arctic and so on. And Greenland's sitting spot up there. So I think the issue is, the US, they haven't had to worry about the Arctic before. They put a base on Greenland, in the 50s or 60s. Their idea was to have nuclear missiles hidden underneath the ice, running along on rails to be able to be fired, very rapidly and hidden from the Russians. If you're not familiar with this base, just search it in Wikipedia and have a look at it.
Camp Century is still there, but it's not being used. But there's lots of nuclear stuff and lots of waste that they left behind.
Yeah. What made the project not feasible at all was the ice moves. So you can't build a rail on ice underneath the ice because the ice just shifts and your rail gets all bent and everything shifts. Different parts of the base would move to different places. The ice is dynamic. It's not just sitting there. So the idea of that base was completely crazy, actually, in retrospect, but they didn't know at the time, I guess. So anyway, it's sort of the geography of different countries and their proximity to the Arctic that has affected things. But as the Arctic melts, shipping routes could open up and so on. The minerals are up there. Seems to be like a mad dash now to have a presence in the Arctic, even for many countries that are non-Arctic countries. Like China's building some icebreakers as well, I think. Right?
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
They're nowhere near, the Arctic, so.
Well, the U.S. still has a military base. I don't know how to pronounce it exactly, the Thule Air Base up there, which
Yes.
J.D. Vance went to visit because they didn't really want him to visit the rest of the country. So he was on American stomping grounds there. But there is this American presence already in Greenland. And I believe there are some Danish operations there as well, of course, because Denmark has a... I'm not sure what the relationship is exactly, but in some way it's a sort of a colony of Denmark, although it's autonomous.
Well, it's Pitufik is the place, but that's only because under the convention of wishing to seem properly integrated with the society in Greenland, all the place names that are familiar are being renamed with Inuit names. So you think, where's this hell is be too thick, and in fact, it's Thule Air Base, and that again sounds as if it's a question of naming. Its original name was Thule, as named by the founder of the base when it was a place for hunting and for fur trapping. It's not right that it should be there as an airbase, but that was because of the conditions that made it a good place to have ferry flights from the US to Europe.
You've spent a lot of time up in the Arctic in submarines and on ice and so on. I assume you got to Greenland, did you, in your travels?
Yes, yes.
You might not recognize it now with all of the ice melt, and there has been some development in, I don't know, I think the population's gone up a little bit. I think you said there was a new airport or something, Dale?
Well, they've expanded their airport so that they can now accept international larger jets.
For
also,
tourism?
these cruise ships are coming into the harbors because the harbors are slightly more accessible now. And lots of cruise ships. When I looked at the report from the Greenland Tourist Association, I saw 2,300 not necessarily large cruise ships, but ships coming into Greenland, maybe about 80 cruise ships, these big operations, which you can imagine this little places where suddenly 2,000 people descend on them. It just, lots of the tourist industry in Europe were like saying, we don't really want you around here because it's just such an invasive force.
Right.
And it's sort of a charming fishing community. It seems to be quite content to be what it is. The Inuit people there are, they have an identity that they strongly maintaining.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it would be disastrous to disturb that in the way that the destructive way in which the US would obviously proceed, because you haven't actually got harmony between the Inuit population and the part of the population that's got Danish background, but they do get along. And what he meaning Trump, would like to do is just smash that all up and have a place where you can mine everything and forget the needs of the population.
We need it really for international world security, and I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it.
I think that would be a disaster and a catastrophe for Greenland as well. And it's not something that will be welcomed by the population, even though
so far they have definitely stated that they're not for sale. They don't want anything to. 88% of the population is Inuit, and I guess the rest are probably Danish. But the Trump proposal of giving them $10,000 each a year, buying them off, of course, because that's how he thinks you can buy anybody and their life doesn't matter. It's the lack of compassion and understanding of this administration is something that's just so appalling to all of us. But I digress. Greenland.
Now it looks like you're in Greenland. Is that a fjord and a little community?
Well, Greenland is so beautiful. I had to use it as a background for this discussion. It's such a charming place. I haven't been there, but from the pictures I see of it, it is a lovely place. And we hope, as Peter says, that it can maintain itself despite the ambitions of powerful nations for its strategic location. The thing is, they know that it's melting. They deny climate change, but they know that it's melting and opportunities are opening up. Putin and Trump are like, okay, we're going to have a bonanza over there. There is mining there now already. There's 170 some odd mining operations already digging for cobalt and copper and rare earths. So it's already kind of starting.
Mm. Yes, the trouble is people are not keen to become miners. It's a very nasty business, and people are happier to fish and hunt. And somebody has to do the mining. Of course, that would be the US. But you're better off without doing any mining, I think.
Yeah, well, then you have an influx of a population that you don't necessarily want there. And this would be a resource rush of unparalleled proportions because there's a hell of a lot of stuff under the ice. This may play out, in the future. It's probably certainly will play out in the future as the ice sheets melt. There is also a lake in the center of Greenland that would be exposed, I believe, and that would be an interesting geography.
Yes, well, there's an area which is it's not quite a lake, but it will become a lake because of the water being dumped into it from all the fjords and the masses of water that are around. Gradually builds up a mass in the centre of Greenland, which will be something to reckon with in the future.
Well, Greenland is a very interesting story and one that's going to play out over the next decades and centuries. Thank you both for your wisdom on the subject, and we'll see what happens in another couple of years. So thank you both.
Well, thank you.
Mä en muistu nähdä poissa